Call of Duty, the catchphrase of weird uncles who need to pee, and also the decade-spanning cajillion-dollar gaming series that, at the time of this video, is on its 21st mainline entry and counting. COD is one of those gaming franchises that I've played since the first title 22 years ago, and honestly, I've always been a massive sucker for it. The campaigns are bombastic, freewheeling, over-the-top action movies, but they're also inextricably tied to the American military and the overarching military-industrial complex. Other creators have done incredible deep dives into how this series yada yadas over or even promotes deeply problematic themes, like Jacob Geller's breakdown on Call of Duty's use of torture. But for a series ostensibly about war, I've yet to see anyone look at Call of Duty's depictions of war crimes. And even further than that, I'm curious to see if, as the series evolved from a Medal of Honor knockoff to literally the largest franchise in gaming history, if that deepening relationship between Activision, the US military, and defense companies increased, normalized, or even justified depictions of war crimes. My plan in this series is to chronologically play and analyze every single Call of Duty game in the series and apply my research to count every war crime in Call of Duty. But before we dive into 2003's Call of Duty, I would just like to issue the following disclaimer. I am not a legal expert.
Not a lawyer.
But all of the sources for the rules of war are publicly available and they will be linked in the description down below. I'm also making these videos as a wombo combo of educational and entertainment purposes. It's really hard to toe the line between such a serious topic and my own desire to appear funny and likable. This series takes a ton of time to research and to produce, so please subscribe to the channel to keep up with this and the other stuff that I'm doing here. Now, without further ado, let's count all of the war crimes in the first Call of Duty from 2003. The game opens up with you in basic training to become a paratrooper in the United States Airborne. It's all very typical tutorial stuff, but there is this one sequence where you're crawling underneath a barbed wire fence and your sergeant starts blasting 1,000,000 rounds out of a machine gun over your head. And if you're wondering, there's no way they do that. Yes, they do. This height above soldiers would never be done in the modern era as it's way more dangerous than beneficial, but live fire exercises are a key part of basic training. Now, I have memories of playing this as a kid and actually getting through the obstacle course so fast that the ally AI bugged out, and then they'd stand up in the machine gun fire like that one scene in Jarhead.
Sounds that you are hearing are live rounds. You will get the fear out of you. Keep moving. On. Keep moving.
But I couldn't replicate it for this recording, and wow, that just haunts me, war crime or not. All right, so nothing happened in basic training, so we're gonna go on to the first real mission of the game, which is the paratrooper landing before the full-blown D-Day invasion. You get dropped ahead of the main force of the paratroopers so you can set a beacon to help guide the other planes in. While you're trying to find your buddy, we encounter our first war crime. We encounter our ally's lifeless body hanging from his parachute in a tree, his rifle 10 feet away from his body. And it seems fitting that the first war crime in this entire series is committed by Nazis. It is a war crime to kill or wound a combatant who has laid down his arms or is no longer having a means of viable defense. His gun far away from his body, him stuck in a tree, cut and dry. Let's put one on the board. You take your revenge on the Germans in the bunker, throw the beacon down, and then the D-Day invasion starts with a bang. And kind of a surprising bang, because you end up in almost immediate direct combat with a bunch of German soldiers hiding in a French house, but then a random bomb falls out of the sky and blows that house up. And that's actually going to make our second war crime of the series. Because even though this residential area has German soldiers in it, there is no way that this random bomb or artillery strike knows that. All you would know is that you're dropping a bomb on a residential area, and attacks by bombardment on residential areas without sure military designation is a war crime. Even though civilians are not depicted in this Call of Duty game, this is 100% a civilian area. You have no means of guaranteeing that there are German soldiers in the house that you are dropping a bomb on. Put it on the board, go on to the next war crime. We continue to fight through this initial area, and then we encounter our next war crime, being overkill. This kind of ticks the box on a few different rules of war violations. The first one being killing or wounding a combatant who, having laid down his arms or no longer having a means of defense. This man became unarmed, wounded, screaming in pain. We continued to hit and shoot him. The first mission ends and we begin an assault into the town of Saint-Merigli. I probably am not saying that right because French, but this is all straightforward combat until this German pops up in this church with an MG42. And we'll put another war crime on the board, a church being taken for military use. This constitutes a war crime because intentionally using or directing attacks against buildings dedicated to religion, education, art, science, hospitals, all of the above does constitute a war crime. So both us having to shoot at this German who is based in a church and the German basing himself in a church is very bad. Whoops. And with that, the mission ends. The next mission kicks off with a bit of a role reversal as US troops have to now defend Saint-Merigli from a German counterattack, meaning that we end up doing a lot of the same stuff that the Germans were doing before. Religious structure used for military use. You'll also notice now that the US troops are based in the church, they also have a stockpile of German weaponry. Just for the record, because I thought it was interesting, stealing an enemy combatant's weapon or repurposing it against them is not a war crime. It's actually kind of encouraged. However, after destroying the enemy tank, we do end up back in the church again, and not only do the US troops use the church as a fortified military position, the Germans then also make their assault through the cemetery, which, destroying burial grounds? Put another number on the board. The push and pull of counterattack and defend happens for quite some time in this mission. It's honestly a lot of fun. But then the US troops shift to a different part of the town to repel another phase of the assault. And then this happened. Friendly fire in an accidental sense? Not a war crime, and this was 100% not deliberate, but ugh. Anyways, moving on, this tank rolls into town and squishes one of our guys. It's really gross, but it also kind of just happens by happenstance. I don't really know how to count this, but it doesn't feel intentional that they were like trying to squish the guy. We won't put one on the board this time. After defending Saint-Merigli, you and Sergeant Moody and Private Elder hop into a car and then drive through the French countryside in an on-rails shooter section. Nothing really stuck out to me, but it is really funny to do drive-bys on dozens of Nazi soldiers, but no war crimes. Sequence after the car mission borrows liberally from Band of Brothers and sees your squad running through trenches and hedgerows blowing up German artillery. Everything's super above board until you run into this scenario where there's a wounded soldier stuck in a field and a medic pinned down by enemy fire. Now, you may not know this, but medics are considered a protected class during combat, and any willful or reckless killing of a protected person, that's a war crime. Now, we're moving into Medal of Honor territory because our paratrooper gets pulled away from being a typical soldier and it starts getting special tasks to rescue POWs and key personnel. The assault on this mansion is super fun with really good close quarters combat, but nothing that would turn heads until we get to the secret prisoner bunker in the wine cellar. We stumble upon Captain Price, and as you can see, his name tag is a little orange or red, and that means that that character has received HP damage. I'm using this to infer that they were probably beating or torturing Captain Price. POWs are another protected class of soldier in war, and torturing a POW is 100% a war crime. After rescuing Captain Price, the next mission sees you going into a legitimate POW camp to just rescue one guy. This is another fun run and gun mission with a timer, no less, but the whole assault plays out without any obvious war crimes being committed. The only strange thing that I really noticed is just how empty the prison camp is. It's like they just built it for this one random British guy, but hey, that's 2003 gaming for you. And with the conclusion of that mission, we are moving on to the British campaign of Call of Duty. This is another behind enemy lines airborne landing, this time in gliders to fight for and secure a key bridge. This is another push and pull mission, and everything is just a proper jolly good show, chaps. You know, how British people talk. Until enemy tanks start rolling in.
Get to their flak gun and turn it on that tank.
You are tasked with commandeering an 88mm cannon, which is a combination anti-tank and anti-air weapon to destroy the tanks. But then I figured, hey, I'm already sitting on the thing, let me just turn this on the infantry. I fired the gun and immediately felt like I'd done something wrong, which led me down a super wild rabbit hole in my research that more than likely has me on a watch list now. Using anti-vehicle weapons against infantry. Now, this video is supposed to be borderline tongue-in-cheek while also still being educational to the degree that I can understand and interpret these so-called rules of war. War is objectively bad and should be entirely unlawful in a utopian sense, but hey, we are playing the military-industrial complex video game series, so technically, it is 100% acceptable to target infantry with the weaponry you have available to you during a pitched battle. In my hours of research, the quote, "anti-material weapons don't distinguish between what material they are being used against" really stands out to me. But this video would be much less exciting and my pacing would be completely fucked if I didn't choose to interpret the use of means and methods of warfare which are of a nature to cause superfluous or unnecessary suffering is prohibited rule as applying here. It's my video. I've made my case. Get pressed in the comments if you wanna.
That's the last of them. Excellent work, lads. Bloody well done.
I told you they talk like that. Our next mission takes us on another super secret espionage mission to assault a hydroelectric dam that the Germans have occupied. I don't really know how we managed to get over to this obviously heavily guarded space, but hey, what the hell? Set piece is a set piece. We get into the belly of the dam and then I did this. Shooting an unarmed wounded soldier. This is a willful or reckless killing of a protected person, or for example, a wounded combatant. Killing or wounding a combatant who, having laid down his arms and having no longer a means of defense. That guy didn't have a gun, I kept shooting. And then we do this. Sabotage of infrastructure. Deliberately attacking civilian objects and destroying infrastructure indispensable to the survival of the civilian population are war crimes. Now, I suppose you could make the argument that this has become a military site more than anything, but I just think that blowing up a dam that is providing power for the local populace raises at least some gray area. Not to mention the whole issue of what happens when a dam holding back like 1 trillion gallons of water is suddenly no longer there. Anyways, we, being literally just me, the player, fights the way back we came to hop into a truck that some homies stole to get us out of the area, pedal to the metal, and we are booking off that dam, and then we ran over that guy intentionally. Now, in this specific situation, I'm gonna call this allowable and not a war crime. That soldier was 100% actively firing at us. There was not another way for us to progress forward. And yeah, hitting a guy with a semi-truck, super gross, but not like illegal in the strictest sense. I don't know, this shit is weird, man. Anyways, we get another on-rails segment as our truck, or lorry as they say, is chased across the countryside. Everything's going as planned until the time comes for us to blow up a bridge. This again falls under sabotage of infrastructure. You can't really say that it's in scope for us to blow up a whole bridge that serves an area so that 2 guys can get away from a mess that they've created for themselves. Now, we continue to run until we get to an airfield to, I guess, steal a whole ass plane that one of us apparently knows how to fly. Yeah, it's an action movie. You're so right. Now, as a side note, this mission was annoying as fuck to play for some reason, and I failed a lot. So we're gonna jump around in the editing a little bit because there's a lot of game over screens. Now, if turning an 88mm cannon on infantry was a crime, this somehow feels even worse. Shooting dudes with this thing makes me feel like that one scene in Saving Private Ryan. It's just grody.
Back on 20mm, take it out!
Anyways, after using an anti-aircraft gun on infantry, we then have to turn it on some warplanes that are both taking off on the runway and are already in the sky, and I was convinced that blowing up a plane during takeoff would be a slam dunk war crime, and it's not. It felt real bad, but hey, I don't make the rules. I just spend hours of my life reading about them, and yeah, you can shoot a plane during takeoff. Anyways, we steal the plane, fly away, and move on to the next mission, which opens strong. This is some grade A spy shit, but this type of espionage is like a giga no-no. Let's run down the list. Disguised as an enemy to infiltrate a secure position. There are so many layers to wearing an enemy uniform to then commit a hostile action against that enemy. One, if you get caught by the enemy wearing one of their uniforms, that is an instant death penalty offense. That is considered espionage rather than like actual legitimate combat, and you don't get to claim being a prisoner of war. You lose all protected status. They're gonna shoot you. They're gonna shoot you. Then immediately we impersonate an enemy with stolen communications. Again, this is just like we're adding layers. We're adding layers onto this whole problem. Then we're impersonating an enemy with stolen communications, a uniform, and falsified documents.
Wo ist Fregattenkapitän Schmidt?
Musste zu einem dringenden Treffen mit Admiral Dönitz.
Alles in Ordnung? Willkommen an Bord.
And then it gets even crazier by us taking a hostile action in enemy uniform.
Ich muss das überprüfen. Einen Moment bitte. Ich habe einen Offizier hier. Sagt, er habe Papiere.
Let me read the rules from this exactly. Engaging in attacks while wearing the uniform of the enemy is flatly prohibited as affirmed in the treaty law and numerous military manuals, and it is a crime underneath the Rome Statute. Now, there are some very controversial stories of the SS, which stands for the shittiest of super Nazis, wearing American uniforms during the Battle of the Bulge and taking hostile action against US troops to disrupt supply lines. Believe me, any of these SS that were captured wearing US uniforms were, they weren't given a trial. Anyways, history is written by the victors, so we will continue our parade of war crimes in this mission by planting dynamite to sabotage this ship's engines. Captain Price canonically dies in this mission as well. He had such a cool design. It's really too bad we're never going to see him again. Getting back above decks, we then destroy the ship's communications so they will be unable to radio for help. And then we steal a collection of enemy intelligence. Usually, securing intel is kind of the name of the game, but remember who you're dressed up as, and we put another crime on the board. We secure everything we need, we get back down to the dinghy.
We lost the captain. Damn.
We go, oh no! Anyways, to the death of Captain Price, and now it's time for the Russian campaign. The Eastern Front was absolutely fucking brutal in World War II. Later games in this series do a great job of depicting that, but even for the first Call of Duty, I remember the Russian missions probably the most. Let's see what happens. The atmosphere is crazy in this sequence, even if it is just like a one-to-one ripoff of Enemy at the Gates, which is something that we're gonna see in later games as well.
For each and every fallen Soviet soldier, you will make them pay with 10 of them. Anyone caught deserting his post will be shot.
Okay, so the strafing of unarmed troops in this transport. Well, that's hella unethical, and what part of war isn't? But in this situation, it is allowable, especially since the troop transport returned fire and was not marked in any way to discourage attack. Immediately following the strafing, we get this scene of executing deserting soldiers. Now, this is horrible, costly, wasteful, and historically, the Soviets executed more than 150,000 of their own troops during World War II. But your country makes the rules on how you can be treated as a soldier. Conscripted, drafted, volunteered, the rules all apply the same, and you kind of lose some rights to what your own side can do to you, depending on the rules that they make up. Getting off the boat, and I know this is kind of a divergence from the war crime thing, but I do feel the need to myth bust this sequence. It's super evocative, and it really shows the desperation of this fight. But the Soviet Union did not just throw hordes of unarmed men into Stalingrad. Having to play this sequence without a gun is super vibey, but it's also really not fair to the level of manufacturing and supply that was available.
Anyways,
you meet this Giga Chad named Sergeant Borodin, and you'll never see him again, but he does help keep you alive for the rest of this intro mission.
Let's head for that red car over there. There's that building down there. Don't worry about that, Commissar. I'll take care of it. Ready?
Again, executing a deserting soldier, gross, not a war crime.
Ready? Okay, go, go!
Now, fragging an officer. This is not a war crime since this is technically a variation of friendly fire, but if you have some time to do some reading, the history of fragging is very interesting. Anyways, you get to safety, call in the artillery, and it's time to move on to the next level in the Russian campaign.
We're taking Red Square! No retreat! No one step back! No mercy for God! Open fire!
Woof, mass execution of your own troops. Again, brutal, unnecessary, wasteful, not a crime. Charging forward, we fight our way through an apartment building with a Sergeant Makarov.
No Russian.
And then we grab a sniper rifle to turn the tide. This next sequence has us specifically targeting a bunch of Nazi officers who are giving commands to their ground troops. And you might think, hey, directly targeting officers, that's got to be a war crime. That's going to disrupt everything. And while in older conflicts it was considered ungentlemanly,
now we come to the matter of the specific targeting of officers during engagements. Colonel, you must know that in civilized warfare, officers in the field must not be accorded inappropriate levels of hostile attention. Imagine the utter chaos that would follow from leaderless armies having at each other. There must be gentlemen in command.
targeting officers is super strategically viable and is 100% accepted by the laws of war. Now, after getting out of that building, we maintain a theme of speed and aggression in the Russian campaign, and we charge forward into the next missions. It's kind of wild because the Russian levels are super brutal. They're fast-paced, they're violent, and they all have this sort of corridor shooter type energy where you're running through a ruined city, which I am glossing over, but the siege of Stalingrad was horrific and full of despicable acts against the civilians caught in the middle of this conflict. But despite the aggression and action of these missions, the combat is as above board as it can be. I had to trim out about an hour of gameplay before we get to this next sequence at Pavlov's house, where the next war crime actually takes place. After assaulting a multi-level apartment block and clearing it out of enemy troops, you immediately have to turn around and defend from a counterattack. This mission also just sucked ass to play, as the ally AI does very little to protect you while you run between anti-tank sniper rifles and are trying to destroy tanks that instantly laser beam onto your exact location. Regrettably, in my frustration, I turned this anti-tank sniper rifle onto a cluster of German infantry and...
Oh, baby, it's triple!
The rest of the mission, I scrambled between the guns using them on their intended targets, tanks, blasting Germans at point blank that made it into the house. The next few missions were eventful, but war crimes. But you know what this video shouldn't be? Likeless. After many missions of close quarters fighting, the devs decided it was vehicle time again, and we get our first obligatory tank section of the series. Woo! Let's get tanked! Tanks fall into that weird zone again of, is it wrong to use big gun on small man? The rules say no. The pacing and point of this video, and my personal taste, say kinda, yeah. Also, there's this one guy in our tank that like just seems to be trying to get one joke to land, and everyone is either too nice or uncomfy to tell him that it's falling flat. Okay, now shooting a dude with a tank cannon may not actually be a crime, but you know what is? Stealing a joke and then telling it in front of the person you got it from. Come on, man. Anyways, the tank mission goes on for some time, and COD gives us a taste of destructible environments, which means this counter is going to go up again. Okay, now this one is almost a crime since the attack against this soldier could have been considered not in proportion if the house he was already using as cover wasn't already in ruins, and he also had a bazooka.
Oh, baby, a triple!
After one more point-blank tank shot into a cluster of infantry, the campaign switches back to the Americans for a final mission during the Battle of the Bulge. This kind of segues into an expansion for the game called United Offensive. I wasn't planning on covering any expansion packs for these games, but if you want me to do a video on that, well, you'd better tell me in the comments. Anyways, this mission kicks off and a guy immediately drifts off course and boom, landmine. And you may be surprised to learn this, landmines are very bad and also constitute a war crime. Use of weapons which are by nature indiscriminate is prohibited, and landmines cause superfluous or unnecessary injury and suffering. So, mega bad. We use them all the time, mega bad. Nothing else crazy happens in the American campaign. We just clear some bunkers, destroy one more tank, and then we move on to the final level of the British campaign.
Hardly believe we've done it. Evans, we'll head east, destroying any targets of opportunity. Then we'll meet up with the rest of the squad as planned.
There's another snow level with our SAS squad in Germany making moves to find and destroy some German V2 rockets. We run and gun through the forest before stumbling upon the launch site. Now, I'm going to award a war crime per rocket because V2 rockets were by default a terror weapon employed specifically and indiscriminately against civilian targets without any consideration for military value. We fuel the rockets up for some reason and then decide to put dynamite on them, and with the V2s destroyed, we move on to the final mission of the Russian campaign. And well, that mission is going to kind of leave us on a weird end note because, like much of the Russian campaign, it is violent and action-packed, but it's not war crime-filled. We assault and capture the German Reichstag building and throw the hammer and sickle flag up on the roof, and boom, credits are rolling. So, let's see how our finals total shook out for Call of Duty #1. All right, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video interesting and entertaining. This is the first in what will be a long series, so comments, feedback, suggestions, it's all super welcome. Now, this isn't the only kind of content that I make since I stream a variety of stuff on Twitch and on this YouTube channel, and I make other videos like impressions, retrospectives, and just like weird little challenges. Subscribing to this channel helps me a ton, so thank you for that. Once the rest of the series comes out, there is going to be a link to the playlist here, and if you want to watch something else, that is going to be over here. As always, be kind, do good. I'll see you in the next one.